She almost didn't stop. This is the part of the story that matters, because it is the part that is honest. She saw him at the side of the road, a figure at the edge of the verge in the November rain, no umbrella, no shelter, standing with the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting for a while and has arrived at a kind of peace with the waiting. And she almost continued past. The road was wet and the afternoon was getting dark, and she was 20 minutes from home, and there was a lay-by 200 yards further on that would have been more practical. She did not use the lay-by. She pulled over at the verge. The decision took perhaps half a second. She would have been unable to say afterward what resolved it in that direction rather than the other. Some decisions are like that. They are not made so much as simply executed by a part of the self that has not bothered waiting for permission. The road she had been driving was one of the minor valley roads, not the main A road, but the one that ran parallel to it through the villages, the one she had always preferred because it passed through the places rather than beside them. The one that knew how to be a Welsh road, narrow and particular and slightly unpredictable. It was the kind of road where a person standing at the verge in the rain was visible from a distance, visible enough that she had seen him before she had decided what to do about him, had registered the figure and the stillness and the absence of any umbrella while the car was still 100 yards away. The verge was not a bus stop. There was no shelter, no sign. Just a widening of the grass at the edge of the carriageway where, presumably, the occasional bus that served the valley villages had an informal arrangement with its regular passengers, the specific, unwritten infrastructure of rural Wales that exists in the knowledge of the people who use it rather than on any official timetable. He was 78 years old. This she did not know at first. She learned it in the car, as she learned most of what she learned about him over the course of the next 40 minutes. What she knew at first was what she could see through the rain-streaked windscreen as she pulled up alongside him. A man of considerable age, in a dark jacket that was not a raincoat, holding nothing, standing at the roadside in November as though he had every right to be there and every intention of remaining for as long as was necessary. He was not distressed. This was what she had checked for first, in the instinctive way of someone slowing a car beside an elderly person standing alone in the rain. The signs of confusion or collapse, the indicators of someone who needs a different kind of help than a lift. He was not distressed. He was simply wet and entirely purposeful in his wetness. And when he turned to look at the car that had stopped beside him, his expression was the matter-of-fact expression of someone who has been offered something practical and is deciding whether to accept it. She lowered the window. "Can I take you somewhere?" she said. He looked at her for a moment. Then he opened the door and got in. He was, she noticed, extremely wet. He had been standing in that rain for some time. His name was Day. He told her this without preamble, in the direct way of someone for whom pleasantries are a detour they are disinclined to take, not rudely, simply efficiently, as though the name were a practical piece of information he wanted her to have and saw no reason to deliver in any other way. "Bonnie Tyler," she said. He nodded. He had recognized her. She had seen it in the moment he looked through the window, the half-second of adjustment, the slight recalibration of expectation. He did not make anything of it, which she appreciated more than she could have explained. "Where are you going?" she said. "Merthyr," he said. "The hospital." The nearest bus stop was a mile back. The hospital in Merthyr was 14 miles ahead. She had been going in the opposite direction. "Right," she said, and turned the car around. He did not tell her to turn around. He did not tell her it was too far. He watched her complete the turn in silence, with the expression of someone who has encountered an unexpected piece of good fortune and is not going to complicate it by objecting. She did not ask him about the hospital, not immediately. She had learned, across a long life of being in rooms with people in various states of feeling, that the question will be asked when it is ready to be asked, and that the gap before the question is sometimes the most important part of the conversation. They drove for a while in silence. The road through the valley was the road she had known her whole life, the way it narrowed into the villages and widened on the open stretches, the hills pressing in on either side, the November rain giving the whole landscape the particular quality it had in this month, the gray and the green and the specific Welsh damp that was not unpleasant so much as simply the default condition of a world that had never been dry and had no expectation of becoming so. Di looked out the window, not with the distracted gaze of someone passing time, but with the attentive look of someone watching a specific landscape. the look of a man who knows this road and is marking it as it goes by. After perhaps 10 minutes, she said, "Your son." It was not a question. It was an opening, if he wanted to use it. He did. He had a heart attack, Di said. 4 days ago, he's... A pause, a very brief rearrangement of the sentence. He's going to be all right, they think. The doctors think. But I wanted to see him. Of course, she said. I don't drive anymore, he said. I gave it up 3 years ago. Thought it was the right thing. My eyesight. A pause. I should have got a taxi. The bus was late and he stopped. Then, I wanted to get there, she understood. You give up the car at 75, and you give up with it something that has no direct replacement. The specific, ordinary freedom of being able to go where you need to go when you need to go there, without requiring anything of anyone. And then your son has a heart attack 4 days ago and the bus is late and you are standing in the rain because the alternative to standing in the rain is being somewhere you are not, which is not something you are willing to be. What's his name? She said. Hugh, said Di. He's 52. A slight pause. The kind that carries the specific quality of a parent computing a child's age against their own, the arithmetic of time passing faster than expected. 52. He's got 2 boys of his own. Grandchildren, she said. 9 and 11, he said. Good boys. Then, with the particular, mild emphasis of a grandfather who has thought about this, very good boys. They drove. The rain continued with the steady, unhurried persistence of Welsh November rain which does not perform itself, simply exists, the way the sky and the hills simply exist, as the background condition against which everything else takes place. She asked him about Hugh, not about the heart attack, but about him, the person. Di answered in the way that parents answer questions about their children when they are given genuine space to do so rather than asked in the manner of small talk. Specifically, with the particular pride and frustration and specific detail of someone describing a person they have known since before the person knew themselves. Hugh was an engineer, had been one since he was a boy, taking things apart to see how they worked. The kind of child who regarded any malfunctioning appliance as a personal challenge. He had moved to Merthyr 30 years ago for work, and stayed because the work stayed, and then because the family had grown around him there, the way families do. She asked where Di had grown up. He named a village she knew, a place 20 miles north of where she had grown up, close enough that they had the same valley accent, the same instinct for certain phrases, the same basic understanding of what a gray sky meant and how to inhabit one. He had worked in the steelworks for 31 years. The same steelworks that had closed when the same forces that closed everything closed it. And then he had done other things. He listed them briefly. The jobs that fill the years after the main thing ends. The work that is dignified and necessary and does not have the same word attached to it that the steelworks had. He was not bitter about any of it, in the clear-eyed way of a certain generation of Welsh men who had seen enough to know that bitterness was a form of energy that could be used for other things. His wife had died 7 years ago. He said this the way people say facts, not performing the grief, simply noting the absence. Her name was Megan. She had been, he said, the funnier of the 2 of them, which Bonnie Tyler believed immediately on the basis of available evidence, because Di had the specific deadpan of someone who has spent decades married to someone funnier and has absorbed the timing. Were you close? She said. We are close, Di said, with a slight and deliberate emphasis on the present tense. We had our difficulties years ago. He paused. He was a stubborn child. He got that from his mother. But I didn't tell him that until he was 40, which was perhaps too long to wait. A dry, brief, almost smile. He's a stubborn man. We are close, she thought. This is what a good thing looks like, quietly. Not the dramatic reconciliation, not the grand gesture. Just a man who waited until his son was 40 to tell him where the stubbornness came from, and who is now standing in November rain because he wants to see him. They passed through one of the smaller valley towns, a familiar configuration of terraced streets and a chapel and a market and a pub and a school with children just beginning to come out of the gates. The parents already gathered at the edge of the playground in the November drizzle. Di looked at it as they drove through, the same attentive look he had given the road. My grandchildren go to a school like that, he said. 9 and 11. The older one starts comprehensive next year. He was quiet for a moment. I haven't seen them since August. You'll see them now, she said. Once Hugh is better, he said. He won't want. A pause, a calculation. He won't want them to see him in the hospital. He wouldn't like that. Being seen weak, stubborn, she said. Yes, Di said. And this time the almost smile completed itself, briefly and entirely. She thought about the 9-year-old and the 11-year-old, very good boys, who would hear the story at some point. Not today, perhaps not this year, but eventually, in the way that families accumulate stories. The grandfather who stood in the rain for this, who gave up driving 3 years ago and stood in November rain at the side of a road until a stranger pulled over. That would be a story these boys told. She was certain of it, with the specific certainty of someone who has spent a lifetime understanding how stories work. The hospital appeared ahead as they came around the curve of the valley road, the large functional buildings of an NHS hospital on the edge of a Welsh town. The car park already busy with the particular activity of a Tuesday afternoon visiting hour. The entrance lit and operational. She found a space near the entrance without difficulty. A Tuesday afternoon in November being a time when car parks are not yet at capacity, and turned off the engine. Di looked at the entrance. She did not rush him. There was a quality to how he was looking at the building that was not reluctance. He had come too far and been too wet for too long to be anything other than committed. But it was the quality of someone who has been moving toward something for the better part of an afternoon and is now, for the first time, fully confronted with its reality. Thank you, he said, for the lift. He's going to be all right, she said. You said the doctors think so. They do, he said. He stopped, looked at the hospital entrance. 4 days. I should have come sooner. She looked at him. The wet jacket, still damp despite the car's warmth. The flat cap. The large, careful hands of a man of 78 who gave up driving 3 years ago and today stood in the rain rather than wait any longer. He knows you came in the rain, she said. Di looked at her. He doesn't know yet, she said. But when you tell him, and you will tell him, he'll know that you were out there in it. She paused. That's not nothing, Di. That's rather a great deal. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, very quietly, yes. As though confirming something to himself that he had not quite found the language for until now. He opened the door. He got out. He straightened his jacket with the same careful dignity with which he had done everything. The dignity of a man who had dressed this morning to go to the hospital and had not let the rain undo any of it. He closed the car door. He walked toward the entrance. He did not look back, which she had not expected him to, because he was not that kind of man. He walked to the entrance and through the automatic doors and was gone. Bonnie Tyler sat in the car park for perhaps 5 minutes. Not a vigil, not a performance of empathy or a demonstration of anything. Simply 5 minutes of sitting in a hospital car park on a November afternoon, aware that something was happening inside the building in front of her. A man of 78 arriving at his son's bedside, wet from the November rain, having come 14 miles in a stranger's car because the bus was late and being somewhere else was not an option. She looked at the hospital entrance, the automatic doors opening and closing for the steady traffic of visitors and staff, the specific institutional warmth of the light inside, visible through the glass, the kind of light that is neither cold nor warm but simply present, the light of a building that is operational at all hours and has made no aesthetic decision about it. She thought about Hugh, 52 years old, lying in a hospital bed 4 days after a heart attack, the very good boys at home with someone, the doctors thinking he would be all right. She thought about what it would look like when Di walked into that ward, the old man in the wet jacket, having stood in the rain because he wanted to get there, arriving at the bedside of his stubborn son who got the stubbornness from his mother. She thought about the phrase she had said at the door. He knows you came in the rain. She had not planned it. It had arrived the way the right things arrive. Not from a decision, but from a recognition. The specific, accurate sentence that a moment requires and that you discover you have when you need it. She had said it because it was true. Because Di did not need comfort. He was not a man who needed comfort, the same way he was not a man who waited under shelter. He needed someone to name what he had done, and she had named it. She started the engine. She drove back through the valley in the rain, the road the same road it had always been, the hills the same hills, the November sky doing what it did. The farms went past, and the villages, and the particular dark green of a Welsh hillside in November that has always looked to her like nothing else anywhere in the world. She was home before dark. Robert was in the kitchen, at the table with a newspaper, which was where she often found him in the late afternoon, the specific quiet activity of a man who has learned to inhabit the hours between things without requiring them to be filled. She told him about the road and the rain and Di and the 14 miles. She told him about Hugh and the heart attack and the very good boys aged 9 and 11 and the stubbornness that came from the mother. She told him what she had said at the hospital entrance. "He knows you came in the rain." Robert put the newspaper down while she talked. When she was done, he said, "Is he going to be all right, the son?" "The doctors think so," she said. "Good," Robert said. He put the kettle on. The November rain continued outside the window. The hills were dark. She thought about whether Di had told who yet, about the rain, about the long wait, about the car. She thought he probably had, because Di was the kind of man who did not withhold information that might be useful. He would have told who in the same direct, unhurried way he had told her about Megan and the steelworks and the stubbornness. As a fact, clearly and without embellishment, leaving the response to the person receiving it. And Hugh, stubborn, 52, an engineer who took things apart to see how they worked, would have received it the way a person receives the sudden clear proof of something they had always believed but had never heard stated quite so plainly. It was, Bonnie Tyler thought, the kind of afternoon that looks like nothing from the outside and is entirely something from the inside. A turn of the wheel, 14 miles, a wet jacket, and a man who needed to see his son. She was very glad she had not used the lay-by. Bonnie Tyler died on the 9th of July, 2026. She had told the story about Di to Robert, and Robert had not forgotten it. The particular, vivid quality of a thing told in the right moment and received by someone who knows how to hold a story. He thought about it sometimes, in the months after, the way you think about the stories a person carries that have the clearest impression of who they were. Not the famous ones, not the documented ones, but the Tuesday afternoon ones, the ones that happened between other things and were witnessed only by the people directly involved. A man stood in the rain in Wales. A car pulled over. 14 miles. A hospital car park. 5 words at the entrance door. "He knows you came in the rain." She always knew what to say. Not always in the large moments, though she had known it there too, but in the small ones. The ones that required not eloquence but accuracy. The exact true thing, delivered without decoration, to the person who needed it. That was who she was. In every version of the story, that was who she was. In the weeks after she died, Robert found himself returning to that story. He had many stories. 50 years of shared life produced a great quantity of them. The small and the large and the everything between. But this one had a particular quality that made it return. Perhaps it was the rain. Perhaps it was the 14 miles, the specific, proportionate extravagance of turning a car around and driving someone 14 miles in the opposite direction because they needed to get somewhere and the bus was late. Perhaps it was the phrase itself. "He knows you came in the rain." 5 words that did what 5 words rarely manage, which is to say the complete truth of a thing without any of the truth leaking out around the edges. He thought about Di sometimes, and about Hugh, and about whether the recovery had gone well and whether the 9-year-old and the 11-year-old had been told the story of the rain and the stranger's car. He had no way to know any of it. Bonnie Tyler had not known Di's surname. The encounter had begun and ended at the side of a November road and in a hospital car park, with 14 miles of valley between them, and that was the whole of what it was. But the 5 words remained. He had heard her say them at the kitchen table on that November evening, her coat still on because she had come straight in and started talking before she had thought to take it off, the rain still in her hair, and he had understood immediately, in the way that 50 years allows you to understand things immediately, what she had meant and why she had said it and why it had been exactly right. "He knows you came in the rain." 5 words. The whole of it in 5 words. She had always been able to do that. It was, he thought, not unrelated to the voice. The same quality, perhaps, the same instinct for what a thing required, and the refusal to give it more or less than that. The rain was still there when he went to bed that night. He listened to it for a while, as he sometimes did. The same rain, doing what it always did, over the same hills.